Hello adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have something pretty exciting for you, and you're seeing it right here. We have a new power station that we're going to be unboxing and checking out, and this one is a little bit of a fun one for me because, as you know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I have been using the AllPowers power station connected directly to my solar panel for quite some time now. In fact, that was the first one that I plugged in and figured out if it was going to work, and ever since then I've been rocking with it and loving it, including on this trip that you're currently seeing. However, I'm very excited about this one because it's a different model, and this one's going to have a little bit of a different size footprint and stuff like that. So we're going to be checking this out, seeing how it works, and then I'm going to be taking it on the road in a future adventure to tell you a little bit more about it. But for today, let's do an unboxing. It's a little dusty, so I'm going to get into this box and see what's inside. Now, as always, guys, I like to take a nice common sense approach to unboxings, and so what we're going to do after we get it unboxed is go through the specs. I'll pop them up on the screen so you can see them a little bit more clearly, and then we'll talk about the features and what could possibly be used with this, and then also how we're going to charge it. So all of those things will be in this video, so if you are excited about finding out about a new power station or might have been thinking, I need a power station, I'm also going to leave a link below so that you can pull this up and do your own research as well. And by doing that, I'm hoping that you guys can kind of start assessing the things that you're going to need to be using, and we'll see if they work based on some of the criteria of this guy. Now for me, I always need things that are going to be able to facilitate a variety of different needs, including my electronics. I need it to be able to run a laptop. I need it to be able to power my cell phone and other auxiliary batteries. I need it to be able to, if it's a larger power station, be able to power my tiny cooker, my kettle, and a few other items that are high ticket items. So we're gonna see what exactly it is capable of, but I have no idea what's inside this box yet, so we're about to find out. This is going to be new, and we'll see how this integrates into the floor plan of the van at a later time. We're about to get into the box, but a few features on the box that I thought were pretty interesting. They have put in these new handles, which allow you to more easily carry this. So even though this is a heavier unit, I was very capable of carrying it because of the reinforced handles. You know, little things matter when you're a solo female traveler. And so if I have something that's super, super heavy or super off balanced, it's very difficult sometimes to be able to maneuver it, even a short distance. So if I needed to load this into my van to carry it somewhere or something like that, that makes it so much better. Not to mention the delivery guy did not look like he had to struggle as hard. So I appreciate that. And I know that's completely nothing to do with the actual power unit, but that's new. That's new. But what else is new is the question. And so as I pop open each part of this box, we're about to find out. And ooh, something that's not new that I've always liked, they truly do care about their packaging. They want to make sure that this thing arrives working, and so they have a variety of different things in here right on the top with the power cord and then also the paperwork. But this is the part, this right here, this that I'm pulling out, this is the part that pleases me the most about AllPower. Now, I've gotten a lot of different power units over time. I always say the packaging matters. AllPower has huge amounts of insulation for that package in case it gets into a weird kerfluffle in the van. So that is very nice that they care enough to not only have groove pieces for things to sit and not wiggle, but also this much additional padding to protect the item, because these items are coming from far away, they're very expensive, and they want to make sure they arrive undamaged, and that is very nice. Ooh, but what about the unit? Well, the unit's kind of heavy, but I knew it was going to be heavy because my other one is kind of heavy, and even though that might be off-putting for some people, I have noticed that the beefy nature of my other AllPowers has made it quite durable. So I'm hoping that this one is similar in that capacity, but it has some handles to make that a little easier. So I was able to just grab it like this, set it down, and now we can look at it. Right off the bat, I am impressed. Every plug is covered in some way. I have to figure out if these come down or go up. Okay, they go up. So every single one of these plugs is covered, and it has a little groove for which the cover can fit back in to seal it off to protect these plugs. Now, typically my issue is with the 12 volts that they don't have a plug cover. This one does. It fits very securely. It is silicone, so it's easier to use. These though, oh my goodness, this is bonus. This means that they don't want any moisture to get into any of these ports to potentially corrupt them or short them out. And again, I am very impressed by this. We have talked about so many different power stations, from very minimal 300 watters all the way up to almost 2,000 watters. And in doing so, I have tested so many different things. The consistent thing that I have learned is the attention to those kind of details typically translates into the ability of that power station to last longer in a mobile setting. Now, if I just had these here at my base camp and they were just hanging out, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. The temperature isn't going to change a whole lot inside of a controlled space. And also the moisture is not going to change a whole lot. But all those things go out the window when you put them in a van that physically moves every single day down bumpy roads, and then also has the door opening and closing constantly, allowing moisture in and out. And so people who are getting ready to do van life, you might not think this is a big deal. Oh, but it is. Oh, but it is. And to know that I'm not having to invest in a secondary product in order to keep those things safe, that's a big win in my book. But let's find out a little bit more inside our little packet that has our book and our warranty information right here so that we can learn a bit more about this power unit. First and foremost, this is the R1500, and as you can see, it's a pretty beefy power station. 4 main plugs that are just like standard traditional plugs that everything can plug into, 1 DC 12 volt, and then we have a couple USBs and a couple Type-Cs. It looks very easy to use, very user-friendly. Everything's on one side of the power unit, so that's really good. But inside this book, there's some other insight, so I'm gonna find out how much it weighs, the actual like size itself, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. So the battery itself is a lithium iron phosphate battery, and I think that that is great because I've used a lot of different kinds of batteries. These seem to be very responsive. This one also has a built-in overcharge protection. So if it gets too hot, too cold, or if it's becoming overcharged, it kind of like shuts it down to make sure that you're good to go. And I think that that's really handy. Those are just kind of the more technical things about this, but the more interesting part are the user-friendly aspects. You can charge this thing 3 different ways. You can charge it from a standard wall plug, you can charge it from solar, and you can also charge it from a DC connection. So all of that is accessible. Now, are all the cords for all of those things present? I do not know yet. We're about to find out. But first, let's talk a little bit more about, again, the specs of the actual size, because I want to tell you guys how much this thing weighs. Our official specs are 16 1/4 by 12 and just over 1/4 by 10 and almost 1/2. So it's 10.43, it is 12.28, and it is 16.25. So those are the overall specs, but it weighs 36.8 pounds. Again, it does have these handles where you can easily put your hand in here on both sides to carry it, so it balances the weight pretty well, but 36.8 pounds. It also has a battery capacity of 1,152 watt hours. So all of those things are great to know as we move into the next thing, which is how exactly it is charged. We're going to find out about that cord. We're going to see where it charges because that's not on the front. And we're going to figure out if this would work still in vans, because sometimes whenever things are in different sections, such as on the back or on the sides, it becomes a little bit of a problem. So will this be a problem for you? Because charging is on the side. So here is the front, and then on the left-hand side from the front, this is where the charging panel is. Now, this panel, you press, and then it opens up, and then allows you to see that there are several different options here. We do have an Anderson plug that can be used. I like to use the Anderson plug coming off of my roof panel. So this will be the same type of charging that I currently have in place. And then we have our standard like charging for a wall plug. I think this is the only cable that it came with, but I'm gonna find out. Of course, as always, If you do have one of those other cables for the Anderson, you can use it, but this is the only charging cord that it does come with. So you can only charge this off of a wall plug. Now I'm going to go ahead and untwist this, plug it in, and see what the compressor sounds like on this one, because that's a big deal for a lot of people on if it's loud. So it just has a little connector that I can plug into the back. And after I do, we'll plug it into the wall and see what happens. Okay, here we go, and into the wall. It does a couple of little clicks, but I don't hear anything substantial. The screen just turned on and illuminated, and it's pulling in about 260 watts. And it just keeps going up, and as it goes up, then you start hearing more and more of that fan, which is completely understandable. It needs to cool the things as they're coming in. So that's pretty standard, but it's not too loud. It does make a little bit of a humming noise. Now, I will say this, it is a quick charge. So with that, you're gonna be pulling in a lot of watts off of this particular plug. So this would not be a good plug to use on an inverter that plugs into your DC. So I would not suggest plugging this into an inverter into the DC because it's going to pull so much. I would instead probably encourage you to look into an Anderson DC plug that's going to pull a smaller amount. Just for reference on how it fluctuates, we made it up to 828 watts. A while ago we were at 1,000 watts. It has already gained 1% on the battery. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let it just continue going for about 20 minutes and see how far it goes. So we're gonna set a timer for 20 minutes and see where it ends up after that. In the meantime, they also have sent a solar panel, so let's check it out and see what it's like. Okay, here we go. Got the box open. And, haha! This looks pretty standard like the other AllPower panels, but if you haven't seen one before, let me show you the features and then we can see what all is in this little pack back here. The latches here are just like old safety belts where you just push the button and then this comes out. And you can see it's just a little plastic end, but that does help with keeping this from flopping around like this or doing anything crazy. And it's easy enough that I can do it even with one hand. Now, additionally on this section, other than the buckles and the flap, we have one of the legs. Now, when you use these, you just set them up, and then this has Velcro, which pops out, and you can see there's a tiny bit of support here. So you just lean them into the back leg at kind of an angle, and then you chase the sun with them. Okay, so when it opens up, it has indeed 4 sections, probably as tall as me, and I'm like 5'7", so it's probably about that long. With that said, it can get a little overwhelming when you're using the solar panels sometimes if they're that big. But with this, each one of the surfaces on here is a nice cleanable surface. It doesn't have a lot of pores on it. It's a lot easier for you to use when it comes to the maintenance. You can typically take just a standard like Norwex cloth or something like that and go over these, and that will get most everything off of there. Now, if you do have any kind of debris that's kind of stuck on there, you can use a damp cloth just very gently and get them all cleaned off, and it's great. But again, it's about the size. So as you can see, oh, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. But inside this pouch, there's a few things that I can feel, and I think that there are some connectors in here. So let's zip, and wow, there they all are. Now, having this little place where you can put the cords and keep the cords is very handy. I have a little place in my van that I keep most of my cords together, but my solar panel specific cords, I have a pouch in the other AllPower that I keep them in, and now I can split them between the two so that I have connectors for just about everything there, which is really nice. So I definitely encourage you guys to either have a strategy for a place that you keep your cords, or have a panel that has a place that you can keep them so that they're always together, because in a small space, you wouldn't expect it, but things just kind of walk away, and when they do, it's chaos. And then you're like, where's my stuff? And then you can't find it. So keeping things organized in ways like this, really nice. So now that we know about the solar panel, our time test is almost over, and oh my goodness, it's doing really well so far, but not yet. So I was kind of looking through the book, and I noticed that on the output, it has a surge watts of 3,000 watts, which means that if I put something on here anything that I have is not going to cap that off. So literally I could run my kettle, I could run my air fryer, I could run all of my appliances that I have from the Road Pro, which pulls very minimal amounts of watts, all the way up to the air fryer, which pulls a lot of watts, and then kind of ducks down to the kettle, which pulls consistently a lot of watts. I could probably even run like a hairdryer on here or a curling iron, like a regular sized one, no problem. So that's pretty cool. I have about 20 seconds left, and I noticed that it dipped down just a little bit on how much it's pulling from the wall. It does show that the fan is engaged. It also shows that it is in recharge mode. And so with 91%, that means that we gained just about 20% in 20 minutes. Of course, after we're finished charging, the little door just closes and it clips into place, and then it does not budge again. So now we can look at this display, which has two different color features. It has the high contrast black and white, but it also has this blue. The blue illuminates based on how much charge that you have. We also have a green power button, making it a little bit easier to see at nighttime, which is very, very nice. And then each of the sections you turn on, it shows that they are illuminated as well. Not to mention, it shows you what that authorizes you use of. So this has a little USB and a 12 volt. And then whenever we turn this one on, you can see there's the regular plug and 60 hertz. Of course, though, we're going to do a kettle test because the kettle is the most harsh thing for any power station because it has to continuously pull and pull and pull. It's one of the only items that I have that once you plug it in, it's going to pull the same amount for the most part from start to finish after it gets past that surge watt. So I know for a fact that this can work because we have surge watts up to 3,000 watts. This kettle pulls anywhere between 600 and 700 watts on average. And so this will work. So I'm going to put some water in it, and then we're going to try to boil some water and see how it works. Okay, time to plug this in. And then we're going to turn on the kettle. And then we're going to look over here. And immediately it starts drawing. Currently 137. Usually this does not take very long. So we'll count about how long this is and also how many watts it pulls away. Now, this is a fascinating way to test anything. I definitely encourage you guys, as I've mentioned numerous times on the channel, to, if you have a place like a base camp or a friend's house or a hotel or a campground where you can have some controlled variables, test your things out before you hit the road, because if something's not going to work with something, you're going to end up just lugging around something like it's a brick versus having an easier place that you can access to return it or to fill in the blank with a solution other than that. Okay, we're starting to get bubbles already. It has only been 2 minutes, and we have gone down from 91% to 87%, which honestly is not that bad. Pretty consistently pulling 683 watts, 82 watts, somewhere in that region now. There we are, we're at a rolling boil in only 3 minutes, and that brought us down to 84%. As you can imagine, I'm not gonna need to run this for 5 full minutes because the water's already boiling and you can see the steam off of it right now. But I'm just trying this out because it is a higher ticket item. The main high ticket items that you will use on the road are heaters or cooking devices. It turned off. It turned off. Now, I've never run the kettle for that long, so it could be the regulator inside of the kettle turning off. So we're going to test this with another plug and play device just to make sure that it wasn't the power station that turned it off. Because remember, it has that overheat protection, it has the overcharge protection and things like that. Now, how am I gonna do that? I'm gonna plug something else into it. Now, this can be plugged in using USB or it can be plugged in using a regular plug. First this way, here we go. And then I'm gonna turn it on. Bluetooth mode. Clearly, the kettle was the issue, not the power station. Now, the neat thing about this is a very low draw item, and so unless it's doing something crazy, it doesn't usually pull that many watts anyway. Of course, you guys remember this, which is my bunny light. So I have 2 different lighting sources here that could be used off of this power station, and you notice that it says running these 2 lights with only 81% of the battery left. I could do this for 3 solid days. What about a lawnmower battery? Could you plug that in? This is just something that also has to recharge. So much like my camera batteries, this would have to be charged. So we can put that on there. Now you guys know sometimes I have to do through charging because I can't plug everything in at once. So we're gonna try some through charging while we're at it. Okay, that's charging and pulling about 40 something watts. And then we have over here, you can see our output is now 56 watts, which means that we have now dropped to 13 hours at 80%. So with all of these things going, I have 13 good hours of use without ever charging this even a little bit more. So 10 minutes. And there we go. Now, this is why I do these tests, to kind of show you guys all the things that can happen with a power station, but also to talk about the specs and the ins and outs and things like that. AllPowers has not failed me once. Again, I have my refrigerator and freezer in my van that have been plugged into these things, and I haven't had any previous issues, and I don't expect to have any issues. Based on my experience taking the AllPowers with me on a couple of trips now and having it as my main power source, I've been very, very excited about the other model that I have, but the R1500 is going to allow me to do a few additional things. So I am very eager to see how that works out exactly, and we'll see as I continue to travel. And so I already have a place that I'm going to take this to check it out, and it's going to be super epic. So you'll have to just kind of continue to watch, and then I'll do some updates after it's been on the road for a while. But again, guys, I am very eager between the solar panel, which now is going to give me an additional panel that I can use when I'm at camp that's pretty lightweight and pretty handy, to this guy, which is a fairly large power station, but at the same time has quite a bit of power to go. I'm kind of excited about the opportunity to test this out and see what happens. Okay, timer is now off, and here we go. Let's see what we are up to now. We only lost 1%. Wow. So that's not too bad considering all of the things that we have pulling right now, and this one being something that's recharging another item. So this leads me to want to fill in this one plug one more time. I'm gonna check out my kettle again. Sure enough, the kettle turned on. So it was the kettle regulating itself. And so now we're gonna bring it back to a boil with all of these things on just to see what happens. Right now we're pulling 742 watts. At that rate, we have 1 hour of good use. We're starting off at 79%. And this will be my last big test of all the watts. Okay, we're getting to a boil already, and that was very rapid. And we only lost like 2%. That is epic. So AllPower is definitely coming correct with this AllPowers R1500. My first impressions of this are very, very optimistic. Not only is it able to do a lot of things, as we just kind of proved by putting all those things together, but also it's a pretty substantial amount of power to cart around. So even though it is kind of weighty, I think that they've taken some steps here toward making it very user-friendly for Vanlifers as potentially a primary power source. I think that that is great. So the size of this is going to be good for running different kinds of items. So you know I'm going to be testing this out a ton. But also, I think another thing that I kind of like about this is the fact that even though the compressor, you can hear it when it kicks on to kind of cool everything with that fan, it's not so loud that it's like, oh no, that's going to disrupt me. I don't think it's going to be kicking on and off while I'm sleeping, which is the biggest thing. I think it's mostly going to be whenever I'm using these higher draw items. So that's a big, huge bonus also. The size of it, it is a little bit large, but at the same time, it's not so large that I can't put it in a variety of places, even in my tiny 35 square feet. And so challenge accepted. AllPowers, let's rock with this. Let's see what happens. And, am I going to have 2 AllPowers power stations on my next trip? Possibly, quite possibly. But with that said, remember guys, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. Continue enjoying the adventures, and I'll catch up with you guys with some updates on this as soon as possible. Till next time, guys. Bye. This place was epic.